Hello, my name is Colin, and for this presentation, I'll be going over the feature list for a mobile game I designed called Spoonful. My game is about a chef protecting his recent creation from thieving spoons trying to get a bite. This game scratches the itch for a quick-paced game with simple rules that you can pick up and play for a few minutes or a few hours on end. It features a fun, quirky story where you play as a chef protecting their delectable dish from spoons that move across the screen in random patterns. The player will have access to items and abilities to help them as the spoons dart across the screen for their target. With survival mode being endless and objective mode with over 180 styles, the player has a plethora of options to play. The player has four core actions. The first is tapping spoons. This is the primary way to stop the spoons from reaching the player's health bar. The second core action is collecting ingredients. As the level progresses, ingredients spawn similar to spoons and will move towards the health bar. If they reach the bottom with the player tapping them, the player will keep them and have each of them added to their inventory. The third core action is abilities. Players can unlock abilities by spending their hard-earned ingredients in their inventory menu, which will give them permanent access to the ability. The player can have up to two abilities equipped at a time, with each use of them once per level. There are currently 6 different abilities the player can unlock, with more being developed. One ability is Strawberry Cheesecake, which is also known as double damage. This allows the player to hit each grid twice per tap, which can be useful for the modifier that makes spoons take 2 hits, or if 2 spoons are on the same grid. The fourth core action is items. These are one-use items a player can craft with ingredients earned from objective and survival mode. An example would be fudge nuggets, which creates a single wall in the grid that spoons cannot pass through, forcing them to move a certain path. Another example would be micro macaroons, which freezes a grid so that any spoons passing through will slow down. Other items will be used to guarantee which tier 2 ingredient will be used in the next objective mode. That way the player can hunt down for particular ones. Sorry, the button next slide. There you go. The game can be broken down into 3 simple goals. However, players may prioritize them differently based on their playstyle. The moment-to-moment goal is simply surviving each round, whether that means living long enough to reach a score, completing an objective, or surviving as long as possible. The sub-goal is unlocking all abilities and having a large collection of all the items. Since items are one use, the player will eventually need to earn more, but crafting all the different items and keeping a supply of them is still a good goal. The main goal is earning the highest score possible. For some people, the sub-goal and the main goal may be switched, but my reason for the main goal is that no matter what, you can always strive for a higher score. You can only unlock all the abilities once. The first feature in Spoonful is spoon tapping. The feature's hook is that it allows the player to interact with spoons as they move across the screen towards the player's health bar. The player must be able to tap and remove them from the screen to prevent the spoons from taking a bite of the player's health. To ensure completeness of this feature, there must be lots of testing of gameplay to make sure that nothing stops the player from being able to tap the spoons and that the correct reaction happens. This feature is very similar to games like Whack-A-Mole, where the player must interact with an object to score points. Lastly, this feature is a core part of the game. If the player is unable to tap spoons, then the game is unwinnable, and the rest of the mechanics do not work. The second feature is collecting ingredients. This feature's hook is something that gives the player an additional objective to work towards and adds another level of complexity to the game. The ingredients move similarly to spoons on the grid, so the player must avoid them to earn points, as tapping them will remove them from the board and not give them the chance to collect it. To ensure completeness of this feature, there must be multiple playthroughs with varying ingredients to act like spoons and reward the player when they're not clicked, and go away when tapped. This feature is similar in many ways to where the player must collect items and craft to upgrade something. An example would be Dead Island 2, where the player collects random items like scrap to upgrade their weapons with new modifications. While the feature is important to gameplay, it is not a core system. The game is playable without it, but it does add much more content and replayability. The third feature is using abilities. This feature's hook is allowing the players to choose specific actions, abilities, to use during gameplay. The player can equip up to 2 different abilities for each game that can be activated anytime to help them. The goal is to allow the player some creative freedom in how they play, in addition to helping them with harder levels. To ensure completeness of this feature, each ability would need to be tested multiple times to make sure it causes the correct reaction. Only after each ability is run an abundant number of times without errors will it be completed. This feature is also used in a ton of games where the player can customize their gameplay. An example is Destiny, where the player can choose which version of melee, grenade, and super they use through their abilities. This is not a core system, as it is used to add replayability and more player choice. The fourth feature is spending items. This feature is similar to the previous feature, but is a single use per crafted item instead of an ability that can be used once each game after it is unlocked. To ensure completeness of this feature, each item would need to be tested in each game mode with other items and abilities to make sure it has the intended reaction. This feature is also used a lot in other games where the player can use items. An example would be Minecraft, where the player can collect ingredients to craft an item, like potion, that provide specific effects. This feature is not a core system because it is not needed to play the game. It only adds replayability and gives the player more choices on how they play. The first requirement is the inventory system. This system is used to keep track of all the ingredients the player earns in addition to their in-game currency. This requirement will constantly be tested and verified for completeness, as the game will continue to add new ingredients, items, and other game elements the player will need to keep track of. This requirement is used in many other games as an important part of any game that requires a player to keep track of anything. A popular example is Pokemon, as the player has different tabs in an inventory system to track different types of items. It is a very important requirement for the game, but if the abilities, items, and ingredients are not implemented, it is not a core system. It only makes the core system requirement when those other features are implemented. The second requirement is game modes. This is the broad overlook of the two different game modes to be implemented in the game. The first is survival mode, and the other is objective mode. Each with their own specific mechanics lets the player choose how they want to play. In survival mode, the player must last as long as they can while earning points. In objective mode, the player must work towards different goals to finish the level and earn rewards. This requirement will have continuous testing as new game modes and versions will be added. Each time the mode must be tested with and without all items and abilities to ensure the level of difficulty is balanced. This type of requirement is common in many games that allows players to play different types of games. An example is Halo Infinite multiplayer, where the player can choose which type of match and rules they want to play. This is a core system that is required for the player to be able to play the game. Without game modes, the player has no way to play. The third requirement is the crafting system. This system is used by the player to create new abilities and items for the game using ingredients they earned in different game modes. To ensure completeness of this requirement, each item and ability would need to be crafted multiple times to ensure the desired outcome is met. This requirement would also need continuous testing as more items and abilities will be added. The system is common in many other games like Elden Ring, where the player can create tons of single-use items and unlock different abilities. It is very important to the game if ingredients, items, and abilities are included, but without them, this is not a core system requirement. This is the end of my presentation. I would like to end with saying that this presentation went over 4 features: spoon tapping, collecting ingredients, using abilities, and spending items. It also went over 3 requirements: inventory system, game modes, and crafting system. Each has an important role in the game, but the only core systems mentioned are spoon tapping and game modes, as they are the bare minimum needed to play the game. Thank you for watching my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed.